Okay, I'm going to make this as coherent as possible. Sure, I can play guitar. So, okay, I think I am going to start things off with perimenopause because that really is kind of the root of everything that's going on with me. It's a
lot of the reason that this channel is what it is and it's not something coherent that might eventually bring me at least a tiny bit of supplemental income. And it's also probably one of the more relatable things that I have to talk about. So I'm just gonna tell my story.
So like I said, I was recently diagnosed ADHD. Between neurodivergence, anxiety, depression, general self-esteem issues, I've always struggled with a lot of things. And I often struggled at work. I have had okay experiences at various jobs, at least in various ways. I think there was one job that I stayed at for a few years. I left. I came back for a couple years. Other than that, I've never stayed anywhere terribly long. In 2020, when I was 39, I moved to Colorado. I live in the Northeast and I was living in the Mid-Atlantic at that time. I moved to Colorado for a job that was something that I had been looking for. It was my first management position, but it was moving in the direction that I had really wanted to move with my career and had a really hard time getting there for a really long time. Obviously, I knew it was a risk. Moving, 2/3 of the way across the country to a place where I didn't know anyone at the height of COVID. But it was just the way it worked out, and I didn't think I could say no. I was there for less than a year. Several things converged and ended up being the reasons that I left. But I did really poorly. I had a really hard time.
So, I'm literally sitting here talking. How is this interesting to anybody?
But it was the hardest for me that it had been up until that point. I started having panic attacks going in. I'd sit in the parking lot having a panic attack or crying, which in retrospect, I think was very early perimenopause, was sort of the ratcheting up of some of my mental health stuff. And maybe neurodivergent stuff, some of the social stuff. Did not recognize it at all at the time. Like, I didn't even really necessarily clock that it was getting worse because things had always been hard and I was in this really difficult situation. But fast forward, a year and a half, I moved back to New York, and I had a kind of similar experience at another job, at the first job that I had when I moved back to New York, which I was at for, I believe, between a year and a half and 2 years. It was not a good place to work, to be fair. Like, it was really not a good place to work. But I had a very, very hard time. I've always had a hard time. Like, I've always called out of work too much and been late too much because I just have a really hard time getting myself to do it, to put myself through that. But anyway, even aside from that, some things started happening that symptoms were finally noticeable. I did not immediately clock them as hormone related, what have you. So let's see, so when I was in high school for a while, I was a complete insomniac. Since then, in my adult life, I have never slept very well. I have 2 medical conditions that mean that I wake up quite a few times during the night. So I've always had a hard time sleeping well, but I never had a hard time falling asleep. And I started sometimes having a hard time falling asleep. I started having some GI issues, and sensory issues, but I had the not so atypical, I always had to cut all my tags out. I couldn't deal with wool at all. I did go through a phase in middle school where I refused to wear jeans, which, as you would imagine, was tremendous for my social life. I can't remember why. I don't know if it was I guess it must have been a sensory thing, but I don't remember specifically why. But like, as far as I remember, that was pretty much the extent of it. At this time, when I was like 40 to 41, because I turned 40 right around the time I moved back to New York, my sensory issues started ratcheting up. I had a couple of like favorite sweatshirts that I noticed started to feel really scratchy on my arms and sometimes my abdomen. And when I was in Colorado, I had actually started, I thought that I had become allergic to pineapple because I went through this period where I would get into bed and eat pineapple because I was really broke, and the supermarkets by me always had $2, $2.50 pineapples. And I would get in bed and eat pineapple, and then I would get really itchy. I don't know that I'm allergic to pineapple. I think I might have started getting itchy because it is worse at night. So basically from there, things escalated. At this point, I'm barely able to wear long sleeves. I thought this would be okay because the sleeves are really big. It is actually quite itchy, but for right now, I'm just going to deal with it. But I'm very warm and I'm very itchy right now. If I'm honest with you, I think that was right around when I started noticing a little bit of like hair texture changes. That's right. And there were a couple of times, because historically, when I was younger, my period was never super regular, but it always tended toward a long cycle. Like I would often be 2 or 3 days late. During that period of time, a couple of times that it was on time, and just that was notable for me. That was it. Again, did not clock that this was perimenopause. Fast forward another year and a half, and I did. Basically, I started having a much harder time with work. I had quit one job to try and go full-time with reselling. That didn't work. And I got another job. I lasted 2 weeks. I could not. I think that I was just like, my social issues had ratcheted up, my anxiety in general, but also like the anxiety that the social issues produced had ratcheted up. My everything felt more distressing. My distress intolerance went up. I felt overstimulated a lot of the time, and I still wasn't necessarily recognizing all of these things to the degree where I could like articulate them, but I think that was a lot of what was happening. I had a couple of very short-lived jobs, and then I got what honestly probably should have been a dream job and lasted 2 months. Because again, I started having panic attacks really about being around people, like being stuck in a building with people all day. Even so, on Sundays, it was a skeleton crew, and there were not many people there. And most of the time, I didn't really have to interact with anyone. I could sit in my office and, work on PowerPoints and stuff. The last Sunday that I was there, I was fighting off a panic attack the entire day while hiding in my office. And I just couldn't. I say uncontrollable. I mean, like, obviously, eventually I might have been able to find something to help, but I knew it would have taken much longer than I would have had. I couldn't be like, I'm not going to come in for 6 to 9 months while I figure this out after being there for 2. So I quit and scrambled to put, initially I was pet sitting because most of my life I've been in the veterinary field or animal sheltering, and I've pet sit on and off throughout that time. So I started a pet sitting business back up, and I was doing woodworking for a little while and like trying to sell at markets and such, and that also didn't. I mean, it takes even in a good economy, it takes time to build something like that up, and I didn't have it. I mean, I was putting so much time into it. I couldn't put enough time into my other businesses, and it was not making me money. And my poor put upon boyfriend was spending, who already has a very stressful job, was spending every other weekend helping me with the market, and it just was not sustainable. So the other thing that happened was, okay, yes, I'm not, on my best day, I'm terrible at telling a linear story, by the way. So, 2024, I believe, was the year that I think that I quit the job that I've been at for a little while in March to try to go full-time with reselling. During the course of that job, the previous year in the summer, I had moved into my boyfriend's house. My boyfriend is someone who loses weight when he's stressed. Nobody really knows why, because as far as he can tell, he doesn't eat any differently or do anything any differently. You know, we're both chubby people. And we're both self-conscious about it, but like do our best not to be, and to accept that the other person, like, you know, that we love each other and think we're attractive and all of that. But when I moved into his house, it was, you know, not too long on the heels of a divorce. That's a very long story. And just moving in itself, you know, is incredibly stressful. He was very stressed out. He was melting away before my eyes. I'm sorry, this whole section was like bibbledy slop. I like stuttered my way through it. What I was trying to say was that I believe I have an eating disorder. I have not been diagnosed in that regard. Anytime I've been in therapy, there were just kind of other things that took precedence. But I do eat compulsively in the literal rather than clinical sense of the word. Like I eat when I literally don't even want to. It is probably something that I should address in therapy, and it is probably something that I will address. But I am also mortified to my core about binging in front of people. And also when I moved in with my boyfriend, it was just sort of a brain reset. It was a huge paradigm shift. I'd lived alone for a very, very long time. So for a little bit, my brain didn't function the same way, and I didn't eat that way. I've kind of acclimated, and it's swung back around. But that's what I was trying to say. My diet was night and day. I had to have been eating an absolute bare minimum of 25% fewer calories a day. And he's melting away before my eyes. Like, it's like one of those plants that you're like, oh my God, I can like almost see it growing. Like, he got so much smaller. He felt different. Like, we'd get in bed at night and I'd go to snuggle him and I'm like, where are you? Meanwhile, I am suddenly eating significantly less, especially in terms of sugar, because that tends to be like at night I'll binge on junk food. And I just almost wasn't doing that at all. And I'm gaining weight for months and months and months. And I'm like bitching to everybody at work about it. Yeah, I mean, a little bit down the road, mystery fucking solved, right? Oh, yeah, that totally makes sense. And it is like, I realized later, you know, the weight distribution changed as well. At this point now, I think that there are 2 to 3 of the commonly recognized 34 perimenopause symptoms that I don't have. I just last week got on prescription hormones. It did not go great. I actually ripped the patch off this morning. And I know that this is a process, and this is not like, I don't take this to mean that they're not going to work for me, but I had been using over-the-counter hormone lotions, and the estrogen really helped, but it was that those creams are so weak, I literally couldn't keep up with what my body needed. And they're expensive, and I knew that I needed progesterone as well, but I didn't know how much to be using, so just better to be in the care of a doctor, right? Yeah, well, of course, once I started taking the prescriptions, I wasn't supposed to use the creams anymore, and the prescriptions are not enough. They're not enough. And one of the symptoms that is actually most debilitating and affects my mental health the most is the itching. Because it is, I mean, if I really let it go, it's almost constant. It's in places we dare not speak their name. It's really maddening. Like, and again, sensory issues and distress intolerance, right? Like, I don't do well with that stuff. So yeah, some of that itching stuff I'm not going to speak about publicly, at least right now. But some of the other stuff is sleep is definitely an issue. Sleep is definitely harder. Anxiety is definitely worse. The sensory issues I had are much worse, and I have brand new, shiny auditory sensory issues that make watching TV more complicated and difficult and less enjoyable for me and my boyfriend. The ADHD, I feel like, the crux of ADHD is that we don't have enough dopamine, or we don't have access to enough dopamine, right? I feel like I've gone from not enough dopamine to just none. Like, I do not derive it from anything. I go through periods where I feel very emotionally flat. I feel like I'm really not feeling very much except for fear and anxiety. My anxiety in general is really, really high. I have new health and death anxiety. See, I lost my train of thought. I'm like, my memory is terrible. Word retrieval is terrible, which as an English minor and bookish person and person who has always derived a lot of my self-esteem from my intellect is fun. I actually, when it first started happening, the word retrieval issues, I thought that I was developing early onset dementia, which apparently is a thing. Word retrieval and memory in general getting so bad during perimenopause that women think that they are developing Alzheimer's or dementia is a known phenomenon that nobody warns you about. So now I've warned you. That comes and goes. Obviously, the whole thing with perimenopause is that hormones are in flux, right? For a while there, my periods were 10 days long pretty consistently, and a few times I've gotten them about 2.5 weeks apart. They're not really 10 days long anymore, but they're often about 8 days. So with them also sometimes being more than once a month, that's fun. There are some women who bleed for weeks, so kind of not complaining on that front. But the ADHD stuff, the dopamine. So I don't know how many of you have heard the term mood reader, right? There are people who can actually effectively use a TBR or to be read pile or list or what have you, right? Who can be like, okay, I'm gonna, these are the things I want to read this month or this year or whatever, or this is what I'm gonna read next. It's been waiting way too long, and pick it up and read it, and it's as simple as that. I have never really been that way. I've gone through periods where I tried to force myself to be that way. It doesn't work. I have always been a mood reader, both in terms of whether or not I actually can sit down and read, and in terms of what I read. I've always loved reading. I was a voracious reader when I was little, but my brain will not quiet anywhere near enough to let me I cannot focus on a book. Often when I do, it is by, lighting candles, putting on one of those ambiance videos on YouTube. I really make everything as atmospheric and immersive as I possibly can. Sometimes I do immersive reading where I listen to the audiobook and read at the same time. And sometimes that works. Occasionally I'll play Tetris and listen to an audiobook. But now my brain is like that with everything all the time, but more so than it ever was before. So, I cannot relax. I cannot utilize downtime appropriately. I cannot engage in hobbies. I often do not get joy out of things that I used to get joy out of. But I will, when the anxiety lifts a little bit, enough that I can get excited about anything. Oh, there's this craft project I've been wanting to do. Maybe I can do a little writing, etc. It all floods my brain. I used to have that happen in the mornings. The second my brain was 2/3 of the way awake, I would just be assaulted by everything I had to do that day. Now, it's every second. I'm either just completely clouded by anxiety and or brain fog, because that's another thing, or it all hits me at once. And I literally want to read 7 things at once, watch 7 things at once, do 7 other things at once, and or I'll go, okay, I want to do this. and then I will get everything together, and then I will not want to do it anymore. I'm like, all right, I'll sit down. Maybe I'll watch something. Okay, I'll watch this and turn it on and then have zero interest and want to watch something else or do something else. It flits moment to moment. So I just can never relax or end up actually getting satisfaction or joy out of anything. It's really not fun. But the other fun thing is cortisol. So I think a lot of the reason that a lot of us struggle with sleep is increases in cortisol. I have had one major cortisol surge so far. I felt like I was on meth. I was enraged. I was moving around so quickly and talking to myself so constantly that I made myself out of breath. I was like bumping into things and knocking things over. Like, I'm clumsy to begin with, but like constantly, because I was not thinking and I was moving so quickly and like my proprioception went out the window. I almost got into like 3 car accidents. It was actually terrifying. I almost broke up with my boyfriend. Like, it's scary. It's nuts. And now I can kind of recognize when my cortisol is somewhat elevated. I don't think that I know all of the effects. Like, sometimes, I get a lot more aches and pains, and I get a lot more headaches, and my appetite is like all over the place. And I don't know if any of that has to do with cortisol or just the hormones directly or just inflammation directly or what. But there are certain signs. And I really can feel, any remaining focus that I have is out the window when the cortisol is a little bit elevated. But yeah, and also in general, I feel like really floaty, but not in a good way. Like, you'd think that was kind of vaguely euphoric, but it's like my brain can't actually really grab onto anything. And basically at the end of the day, I do not feel remotely like myself anymore. I don't feel fun. I don't feel, I'm super neurotic, and that used to mean, like, it used to at least have the silver lining that I was always the one that was prepared. We make plans. I do most of the actual planning. I deal with the logistics. Everything goes the way we want it to go because I make it that way. And I can't do that anymore. I don't have the forethought. I can't remember things. I can't make lists. I can't adhere to lists. I'm just all over the place. I'm genuinely feel like a completely different person, and I don't like this person. The prescription hormones. So what actually happened was that the first dose, I got estradiol vaginal cream and an estrogen progesterone combi patch. The first patch and the first dose or 2 of cream seemed to help quite a bit. And I'm pretty convinced that it actually was them, because in the past when I've used a lot of progesterone cream, it made me really sick. And when I was on this patch, I was a little bit queasy most of the time, but not enough. Like, I was like, if I'm getting this much benefit from it, this level is okay. And that's coming from someone who really despises being nauseous. But really the first thing I noticed in the morning, I got up, I started really waking up. I got in the shower and I was like, I feel like almost actually physically heavier, not fatter, but just like denser. And I realized I felt like a little more embodied, like my brain was kind of back online, to some degree, not all the way, but which was great. I was like, I can like handle things again, right? But it was the first dose, maybe 2 doses of the cream, and then they just stopped doing anything. I don't know if that's a thing. That's one of my big questions. If any of you have any experience with this, if you've gone through it, if you're a gynecologist, a hormone specialist, please, like, is that a thing? I do know that my brain does weird things sometimes with substances that I put in it. I actually got some genetic testing, not the full genetic testing, for like meds for,
I can't remember the word. But for medications and making them be processed and work in your body.
Not the full genetic testing because my insurance wouldn't pay for it, but a handful of tests that my psychiatrist was was able to get covered because I did go to a psychiatrist. I'm in therapy now as well, don't worry. But I have been going to a psychiatrist. When I was younger, I had been on a slew. I tried all the antidepressants, all the anxiolytics, all the sleep aids, and I couldn't tolerate anything. I experienced all of the side effects like crazy. I thought maybe my body will respond differently now. Maybe there are new meds, because everything was so bad. I was like, I need to do something. I still don't tolerate. If anything, it's worse. I am not, I think because of the cortisol. I think because I'm so generally like physiologically aroused, I'm so ratcheted up all the time. Sedatives don't hit me quite as hard as they used to. I used to be somebody who could not like one Benadryl, I was asleep 2/3 of the next day. Like, could not tolerate. Magnesium, forget it. Magnesium was the most sedating thing I have ever taken in my life. I was like, when I did get up to pee all through the next day, I was like bumping into walls. Like, it was bad. Melatonin, too groggy the next day, nothing. They don't affect me as badly right now. If my hormones get like fixed, maybe they will, I don't know. But everything else, it was just all bad. We tried my first ADHD med. I was just manic and couldn't sleep. It didn't actually like really help with the ADHD symptoms. It was like fun because I did like do things, but I was almost just as all over the place. Oh yeah, so I've always been like, I can only really take cold meds once per incident and have them be effective, like once per cold or flu. And then it's like my body's acclimated. And if I take them again for the next couple of months, they don't do anything. I was on a drug called Myrbetriq. The first time I took it, it made me feel like not, I want to say high, but there was no euphoria. Like it was not a positive feeling, but definitely mentally altered, like very significantly mentally altered. And then I passed out cold. And that happened for the first 3 times I took it. But in decreasing degrees, and then I was fine. That is not it's not a documented side effect of that medication in the scientific literature. I couldn't even find like one random person on Reddit saying that it happened to them. It's not a thing, but it very clearly happened to me. I hadn't taken anything else that day. There was nothing. I get withdrawal symptoms when I shouldn't. I'll get withdrawal symptoms from drugs that like aren't supposed to be physiologically addictive and that I've only taken for 2 days. So yeah, clearly. So I don't know if that's part of it. I don't know if, unfortunately, like if I'm getting exogenous hormones, if I'm not going to respond to them the same way, if my body like acclimated, or if maybe my body was at such a deficit that like when it first got them on board, it was like, oh, okay, cool. But then realized it was still a significant deficit. I don't know what it was about. Any insights would be much appreciated. So yeah, I think I'm going to stop there and just say that this is a video about perimenopause. I guess part of the reason that I'm talking about it, I'm filming this now, is that things are still getting harder. Nothing's leveling out yet. Nothing's getting easier. Things are getting harder. I am having more anxiety and sometimes even panic, even about pet sitting. Like I have arranged my life such that I don't have to be in a building with people. I don't have to interact with people all that much at all. And I'm starting to, because my brain's offline. I was always somebody who remembered all of my appointments. And of course, everything's in my calendar and I check it compulsively, but I'm still so incredibly afraid that I'm going to forget an appointment, that I have stress dreams about it. I have anxiety attacks about it. It's like I've removed most of my triggers from my life and the goalpost just keeps moving. I have a place to live and a really, 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 really wonderful, patient, supportive, affirming partner. And those are the positives. genuinely, people who don't have those things, I don't know how they get through this. I don't know how women get through this with no support system, with no appropriate medical care. You know, except for the fact that it affects everybody differently. I mean, there are women who go through perimenopause with virtually no noticeable symptoms, but this is rough, you guys. And anybody who hasn't been through it yet, I'm not trying to scare you because, like I said, it affects everybody differently. But, like, look up the symptoms from a reputable source. Monitor yourself. Honestly, my advice is, because most physicians do not prescribe hormones for women in perimenopause as opposed to full menopause. Find someone who does. As soon as you start noticing symptoms, ask around, ask your doctor, because I found mine, the gynecologist, through my new GP. I had a terrible GP, really to the point where she was dangerous. And now I have a great one. I've really lucked out and gotten a suite of doctors that I really like. But find one early on who will help you through it. The hormone replacement isn't right for everybody anyway, of course. I'm not trying to, like, advocate for a medical treatment when I'm not a medical professional, but, like, find somebody who will help you through it, period. Whatever that ends up needing to look like for you. Boy, that was depressing. Like, this is not fun. I'm gonna have to find ways to, like, jazz this video up. Some music. And that's the thing. I also don't know. And, like, one of the things that's really intimidating to me about YouTube is learning about copyright issues and, like, how to find or know. Because there are clips and songs and things that people put in their videos. And I'm like, so do you actually write to somebody and wait for approval to use all of those things? Because that seems like, how do you have, like, a 1 week turnaround for videos? I don't know how any of that works. I also don't know how to say goodbye because I'm awkward. Okay, thanks for watching. Okay, bye.